Okay, let's get this review started. This is a Dometic CC40. This is a low-end, medium capacity fridge. How I define the capacities is basically 30 quarts and below, I consider that small. 30 quarts to 50 quarts, I consider that medium capacity. Anything above 50 quarts and has a double lid design, like 90 or 75, I consider those a high capacity fridge. There is, as I mentioned before, there is a 32 liter version of this and a 40 liter version of this. Width and depth are the same size. The difference between the 30 and the 40 is the height. The height of the 32 is roughly around 1.5 inches smaller than the 40. Note that on Amazon, the 32 liter version is $20 more expensive for some reason. I'm not so sure why the smaller capacity is cheaper. More expensive. They have the same compressor, just takes up less space. So I would not buy the CC32 unless 1.4 makes or breaks you. Like, you can't put it anywhere but like in a certain cupboard or something, and you need that 1.5 inches. But I see no use of getting a CC32. Like I said, the electronics and the compressor are the same between the two. Now that we got the dimensions out of the way, let's talk about what makes this fridge unique and what are its selling points. This is the cheapest medium capacity fridge Dometic offers. If you research Dometic, they are a well-known company and they have several tier levels. This is more or less the lowest of the medium sized freezers. It starts at CFX for their high end, then CF, I believe, on their medium end, and CC as their lowest end. There are so what do you get for your money, or more or less for cheaper? What did Dometic remove? The first is the compressor is lower duty compared to my ARB with SecUp motors or Danfoss compressors, and my other freezer, such as this chill blizzard box from Costco, which uses a higher capacity compressor, or more powerful compressor, which is a Danfoss. This seems to be some kind of third-party cheap Chinese knockoff. What's it called? The compressor. It doesn't remove as much heat as these other fridges or slash freezers that I mentioned before, but so far it has been reliable. Another thing is it has lower efficiency compared to the other Dometics and ARBs. It has a lower cooling capability. Let's say if you are not in a room that's like room temperature, such as 70 degrees Fahrenheit, this struggles to keep things frozen. Let's say you keep it in the back of a hot SUV. I live in California, so let's say if it's like 75 degrees outside, it could easily be 85 degrees or even hotter if your car is in the sun. And this particular freezer has a hard time going to freezing. If you're going to set this thing to, let's say, plus 3 degrees Fahrenheit, which is easily freezing, and you fill this thing up with ice cream, the lowest it can go to when I did this experiment was 24 degrees Fahrenheit. So you have to keep in mind this is a low quality compressor, or less efficient, and doesn't have the same cooling capacity as more expensive fridge freezers. Another thing which Dometic cheaped out on, and which in my opinion was absolutely inexcusable, is these handles. I would not carry this fully loaded, as in, like carry like this. I'm afraid you could easily snap these handles. They are spring loaded, as you can see. It slams back into place. I would stick this on the back of a light duty SUV like an RX, or let's say a RAV4 or an Acura. I would not stick this in, let's say, a overlanding trip. You're going to stick it in the back of your Land Cruiser or truck or Jeep, because as you can see, this easily would snap and break off if you were going to hit a bump really, really hard. I would stick this to light duty back of car if your trunk is big enough, or back of a a crossover SUV that is not going to go off-roading. Another feature that you can't find in this particular unit versus, let's say, a CFX line is a reversible door hinge or reversible opening door lid. As you can see here, as it pops open, you have a rope string so you don't overstretch it, the door. But as you can see, there is no reversible hinge attachments where you can just take this door out and pop it over here. So let's say if you have if you put this in the back of an SUV, or like you have a preferred opening area because of how you set up your car, that could be a downside for you. As for me, I really don't care. Another thing that is also a feature, but I can't show to you since obviously the refrigerator slash freezer is packed, is it's not easy to wash the inside of this fridge freezer, because let's say on a top end ARB or Dometic line, they have a drain on the bottom of their fridge freezers, which you just pop out and you can rinse this out with water or a hose, which is easier to clean. This one, you got to obviously remove everything out, and you've got to have a wet rag and some Lysol Clorox bleach wipes and wipe it all around to clean it. Also, another feature that the higher end fridges have compared to this is the quality of plastic. This feels very, very hollow, lesser quality plastic. I have a feeling that if you were going to hit this on something hard or sharp, it could easily crack and mess up your fridge. That's why, as I mentioned before, I recommend this for the back of a car or road trips that don't require any off-roading, or where there's a lot of shuffling around inside the car, or other, let's say like a toolbox or whatever. Hitting this, it could probably break or crack this type of plastic compared to the true overland fridges such as Engel, ARB, and Dometics, the higher end Dometic CFXs. Another feature that you cannot find on this fridge compared to higher end fridges is a Wi-Fi app. Frankly, I could care less about it. If I need to change it, I generally stop what I'm doing, walk over it, and just change the temperature settings and whatever other settings such as battery protection and so forth at the fridge itself. I could care less about the Wi-Fi app. I've got enough apps on my phone. Now that I'm done talking about all the features that Dometic took out of this fridge freezer compared to its other competition, what are the upsides other than price? Well, thanks to having a light compressor and more or less a light plastic build, it is a very, very light compressor compared to its competition or even its more expensive brothers. This is roughly a 25-pound, 40-liter fridge. Everywhere else is, such as this Blizzard box that I bought from Costco, is roughly 45 pounds or even heavier. And keep in mind, this Blizzard box is also made out of plastic, and this is my Engel fridge, or ARB / Engel fridge, which is made out of metal. And I believe Engel is probably the only company or well-known company that makes a metal fridge and sells it here in America. If it wasn't loaded, this is very easy for one person or even a kid to carry around. Now, keep in mind, I say empty because I would never carry this fully loaded with these crap handles. One upside to this fridge compared to its more expensive cousins in the 50 quart or liter arena is the 50 quart and 40 quarts generally have a type of shelf in this area, or I'll show it to you in that Dometic. This is 100% cooling area all around the fridge. There's no what I consider wasted space or refrigeration space. This may be a bad example because this is also 100% cooling / refrigerating space, primarily because you can see you have this cooling transfer material over here. So if you want to freeze, this thing all freezes, but on the Dometics CFX line and on the ARBs. This shelf doesn't have any cooling elements inside it. All it is just a plastic shelf where it relies on the cool air or the cooling portion of this fridge to transfer over here, so it acts like a mini refrigerator. So more or less in my eyes, it is a compromised design. For me, if I wanted a freezer, I want the whole system to be a freezer. If I need a fridge and a freezer and I have a whole lot of crap, one that needs to absolutely be frozen, is I would bring both freezers with me. I'd set this up as the freezer, and I'd set this up as the refrigerator, where I keep all my, let's say, 7-Up, water, juice inside here, which obviously shouldn't be frozen. And over here, I'd probably keep all of my steaks, my ice cream, and so forth frozen inside this bay over here. Also, while we are on the topic of 12 volts and for 20 volts, the nice thing is this setup actually has a fuse inside of it. Some cheaper fridges don't have fuses. So basically, since there's no fuse protecting the unit, if you get a spike in surge or current, whatever, it will just burn out the fridge. So that's always good. You guys must be wondering how I set this up inside my car. More or less, I don't have my car right now. It's at the shop. But this is how I set up my car, and I will jerry-rig something in that this is a 120 to 12 volt converter, which more or less I will treat as a 12 volt socket inside your car. This would be attached. This is the charger to my Goal Zero or tertiary battery system, in which I will plug this in right now, so it will replicate as the car is running. The alternator will be charging my battery. As you can be able to see here, the input is 31 watts 27, so it is charging. So let's say what would happen as I turn on the fridge right now. Turn that one on, puts power to, this is the 12 volt connection to the fridge, turning it on. There we go, 16 degrees Fahrenheit. Bring it down. As you can see, the output is now increasing as the compressor kicks on. As you can see, it's getting 65 watts in, and it's outputting, the fridge is outputting requires 34 watts to turn on the compressor. Now, what many people don't know this before they buy the fridge is, on your typical car, if you shut your car off, you'll shut power to the fridge freezer. So obviously, if you shut off your car, turn off the key, or you turn off through the push button start, it will typically kill the fridge. So the reason I bought the system, so I don't have to connect a separate 12 volt to the battery. That way you have a direct connection to the battery itself, and you can bypass all the electronics in the car, or at least to the switch, where if you turn off the switch, it would kill power. I developed this system that way I can be able to put this fridge freezer in multiple cars. I have several. I got 1 or 2 trucks and 2 SUVs, and I'm too lazy to mess around with the electrical, adding 12 direct line 12 volts sockets in every single one of them. But I got this battery system just in case, and this way I can just as long as I have space for this battery, I can power everything up, and I'll use its charger to charge while the car is running. And when the car shuts off, this is what happens. See? Input is now 0. It's not charging, but now it's just taking the power from this battery, but the fridge does not shut off. So this is more or less how I set it up. Obviously, connecting a direct line 12 volt from your battery to the inside of your vehicle or inside your cab is outside the scope of this video. But another downside is if you do not have a secondary battery inside your car or pickup or truck or SUV, is if your car does not have a low voltage cutoff, I got the term right now, it would drain your battery and leave you stranded. So that is obviously not a good thing. And although this has a limit, let me just show you guys it right now. Here's the low. You can adjust it to high, medium, low. I always set it to low since I have a tertiary or secondary battery system, and because of that I will put down the voltage cutoffs up here or somewhere around in this screen so you guys know the cutoff range for this particular fridge freezer. Also, another feature I forgot to mention, another feature that you can't find on this fridge compared to, let's say, another fridge, is an emergency override switch. An emergency override switch is this button over here. This is on a Blizzard box. Let's say your electronics have failed, so you can't, it will obviously turn on because you got power, but you can't set temperature. What you do here is that you manually turn on the fridge freezer. Obviously, if you still have power, you just put it on emergency override and the compressor would turn on continuously. When you set on emergency override, it bypasses all of your battery protection measures, more or less the low voltage shutoff, since obviously your electronics don't work and you are going to be manually operating the fridge. So as you're manually operating the fridge, it goes on full freezer mode where the compressor continuously runs or drains the battery. So if you do have something that's you do not want frozen, you have to keep in mind, you have to keep track of your temperature inside the box itself. But obviously the Dometic does not have this, so you don't need to more or less worry about it. Operating the fridge is fairly straightforward. You have your on-off button, which I will just show right now. Takes around 3 to 5 seconds to turn on and off. So press and hold to turn on. Green means compressor is on. If it turns amber, the compressor shuts off and obviously uses less power. Hitting the set, you can be able to change the set point. This one goes down to 0 degrees Fahrenheit all the way up to, well, let's find out how far it goes up to 50 degrees Fahrenheit. I typically put this in 16 for freezer, or 14 or 16 for freezer mode. You press set again, you can change between degrees Celsius and degrees Fahrenheit. You press it one more time to adjust the low voltage battery settings. As I said before, I leave this one on low since I don't connect it directly to the primary battery inside my car. Next, you might be wondering, what can I fit in this fridge? Here's an example. I put some fruits. I make my shakes here. That's another raspberry. I cut kiwis and put it into this tin foil. Blueberries, sausage. I've got a big cowboy ribeye steak in here. I obviously have a temperature stat or T-stat, whatever, which can be, so I can confirm the temperature inside the fridge. Got a big pack of shrimp. Got a frozen ham. Another frozen leftover ham. And I got some pork belly in there. As you can see, the fridge, I mean, there's no shelf, but you have an extra, there's a more or less like a reverse shelf where you can fit more stuff inside here. as compared to that extra space is down here, where let's say on this fridge freezer the extra shelf space is up top. So you can stuff more things in there, like this little cubby hole such as this. But that should give you an idea of what you can stick in here. And also I'll post up how many cans or bottles you can stick inside here if all you plan to do is keep fluids in here. To wrap up this video, let's talk about my recommendations for this fridge. As I mentioned before, this is a light duty fridge freezer. I would recommend it for as a spare fridge freezer to supplement your current, if you only have one fridge freezer at home, let's say you're in an apartment and space is limited and you just can't get another fridge or freezer, this would be a great option for you since it obviously has a 120 volt option. Also, for light duty road trips that don't require heavy or even medium off-roading, due to the handles and to the compressor performance of this fridge freezer, if under extreme heat, I would not recommend it. This compressor cannot handle it, and obviously, as I said before, the plastic is not as robust as higher and more expensive units, and the handles really suck. Don't carry this fully loaded, and be careful be mindful when strapping this down. If it's a lot of shake, it is very easy, in my opinion, to snap these handles. If there is any other questions, I'll try to answer them. Just leave a comment down below. Thanks for watching. Bye.